Good morning, church. Some of you may have attended. I don't know how many of you attended How many of you attended my last session? Okay, good. Thank you. But those of you who didn't, again, I had been asked by our brother Paul to share the story of my life. And I did. I think you will have to read from those who attended and get a testimony for anybody who got blessed. Today, I want to continue, but from a very different perspective. If you want a title for my message today, you can call it Biblical Principles for Establishing and Managing Legacy Business. Every one of those words are important, but a legacy, I think, is best understood when you look at a person towards the end of his life. And I read my legacy novel. I started writing my first novel when I was in Form 1. And I think I shared the story about how that novel went. I did eventually publish a novel with Jomo Kenyatta Foundation. It's called Waiting for Dark Men. I also wrote a collection of short stories, which my children have grilled me about for many years. So they keep on asking me on one particular story in that collection. They say, "Dad, is this you?" And I say, well, all my writing is fiction. Is the fiction based on you? I say, well, I guess you have to figure that one out yourself. And it's called Love in the Heart and Other Stories. I'm sure you can also find it. I think it's on Kindle, and it's also published by Jomo Kenyatta Foundation. So God does accomplish our desires over time, but the journey to that level is often complex and very uncertain at times, and at times also very different from my initial expectations. That's been my life. I'll tell you this, I got a scholarship when I got my first, what you can call real job. I had a series of events that led to that job, and I got a scholarship to go and study in the US, and I had just gotten married to a girl I liked very much. And we had just gotten married, we got a scholarship, and I went to my boss and I said, I don't think I want to leave my wife here. And he consulted, and he told me, okay, fine, we'll cover the cost of your wife also living with you in the US. Then, excited, young couple, 3 months later, I went back to my boss and I said, my wife is pregnant. And he said, I don't think that I can cover the costs of giving a baby in the US and sustaining that baby over there. And I said, then I will not go. Because I started from the beginning, from a lesson I learned from a man called Dr. Samuel Gatere. I used to be a young person. I was in my 20s when he was in his 40s. And he was a practicing medic in psychiatry. And he was a very good friend of mine, because I had been taught earlier on that if you really want to advance in life, as a young person, make friends with older people. And I had a list of them, including Dr. Samuel Gatere. And Dr. Gatere had given me one piece of advice when I told him that I am in love with a girl. How did he give me this information? We had a deal. I used to go to his clinic once a week, and I would enter through the back door. All his patients would be waiting out. So by the time when I get into his clinic, he would have like 100 patients waiting outside. I was going in there to record him, to write out his material, edit them, and the following week we would review. And every week we did like one chapter. A lot of that material, by the way, I talked to his wife at some point and asked her when they are going to publish it, because we wrote a lot of materials. Then at some point he lost the material himself. I was just trying to check on. But anyhow, we had a deal that I would help him with his writing, and I would get 30 minutes in every session in which I could ask him anything I wanted. I would say that's one of the greatest friendships I've ever had. And I want to start there and tell you that if you really are looking to establish anything legacy, get the right foundation. Tuko pamoja? And for my foundation, Dr. Gatete told me two things that were absolutely remarkable now that I think about them. One of them is when I told him I'm in love. He says, what does that mean? That's what he said. I said, I have a friend, a girlfriend. I said, are you sure she's your friend? I said, yeah, she is. This is Paul. I think you're very foolish. I said, why? As he said, how long have you known her? I said, now 1.5 years. He says, yeah, I think I now say you're actually very foolish. A friendship takes 7 years to establish. Notice the word establish. And then after that, it starts to grow. That was one of the most remarkable things I've ever heard from anybody. Phil told me, so what are you going to do with this girlfriend of yours? I said, I'm going to marry her. I went to the answer and she said yes. Oh, okay, fine. I think that's a very good idea. But he just said she's not my friend. I said, no, I told you that you and her would take 7 years to establish a friendship. Did you hear me? I said, yes, I did. He says, and then after that, your friendship will start to grow. Are you following the thought? So what is the application? He told me, when you get married, the first thing that you're going to do is to quarrel. Yeah? So just disregard it. And then you quarrel again. 7 years. You'll have quite many quarrels. But if on the 8th year you're still quarreling, both of you come back in. And I'll have a talk with you. But after the 7th year, you will have established how to live together. But invest those 7 years in trying to make her your friend. That's what he told. Don't you think that was great advice? I think those of you who are married understand. Many of you are not just looking at you, are very young. So I don't think you understand what I'm talking about. But you will in time. And it was really remarkable because my wife and I had our first huge quarrel during our honeymoon. And we had gone I took her. We didn't have a lot of money, so we had gone to a guest house somewhere in Likoni. And my own desire was just to spend every moment with her. I did not care for anything. If I could just be together with her and we would just go out swimming, I think that would be okay. So I took her swimming. In our time, the opportunity to see your girl, like 3/4 naked, I don't think we would have been allowed by church. So we used to relate from a very big distance. In fact, we used to have somebody else in our meetings on a price from another party so that we would not be drawn into temptation. Amen? You and my Qatar. No. We went swimming. We went swimming and at the pool, and that was really the first time to see my wife nearly half naked, if you like. And she sat by the pool, and I went into the pool. At least I could float. I could do a few things, not much in the water. And she wasn't coming in. I said, "Come up, Margaret, come in here." I said, "I will just sit here." So eventually, I just sneaked on her and held her on her legs and held her by the back and just pushed her into the water. And she nearly died, according to herself. We were at the shallowest point in the pool where the water could barely reach, 3 feet from your feet. And we struggled in over there. In fact, she wrestled me down. And finally, I righted her up, and she managed to get back to me. "Since you tried to kill me." It took a few days to win her trust. If she was here, very often she accompanies me in my preaching missions. And every time I tell that story, she says, "Yeah, it's true, you tried to kill me." We have been married for 36 years. Amen? Anyhow, that was not the story I wanted to tell you. But the second point that Dr. Gatete told me, the second point he made, was that never be separated from your family. Don't ever allow anything to separate you from your family. Make short trips, come back. And it was prophetic because 2 of my jobs involved a lot of traveling. I think I'm on my 5th passport. and all the pages have been stopped. I have been to literally all over the world, if you think about it. And I think if I did not have that advice, I would have maybe grown up our relationship differently. But that lesson, never be away from your family for too long, was what I was thinking about when I was told, now your wife would have to be left to go for your scholarship and then come back. And I said, no, I will not do it because I paid attention to what Dr. Kateri said. And I think it was a very, very good piece of advice. So, establish the right foundation. And that foundation, I can tell you, is a foundation that you will find becoming a great basis for building what you want to grow as a business. And we'll talk about business today. But if you don't start right, and to me that right means the right people, means the word of God in you, and many other things. Now, one of the greatest things that happened to me by not going to the US at that particular moment, I keep on thinking, if the Lord allowed me to roll my life back, to a particular point, especially based on mistakes that I've made, at what point would I say, stop it there now, let's start going in a different direction? And I'm unable to pick that point. Because, like that particular point, sometimes I should have gone for that scholarship. And then I suddenly realized that the people that I met by being in Kenya, one of them was a guy who became an incredible inspiration in my life, called Dr. Michael Schluter. If you look on the internet, you can find him. I think he was made an MBE by the Queen at one point. And he is from the Jubilee Center in England. And I can tell you the principles that I have developed out, including in business, a lot of them was in a class that he took out at this that I attended. And in that class, Dr. Schluter taught us macroeconomics. That was the class, a 3-month class. Do you know what was our textbook? Anybody guess? It was the Bible. In fact, not just the entire Bible. He gave us the book of Deuteronomy was our textbook for macroeconomics. And those principles that I learned there, I will be talking about some of them here, are some of the most fundamental things I've ever learned that have transformed not only the way I live, the way I do business, and the way I relate with other people from a business point of view. So I say, would I have wanted to miss that? I said, no. So you can see that at every point and on every corner that the Lord takes you, there is something that you can really appreciate His way instead of appreciating your way. But I want us to start with a passage from the scriptures. And this passage is in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 to 7. And I'm going to be reading it from the New King James Version. And it's a story that many of you know of Elisha and the widow who approached him. And all she had was a little oil. You know the story. So 2 Kings chapter 4, 1 to 7, verse 1. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophet. Notice, she is cried out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead. So she's become a widow. And you know that your servant feared the Lord, and the creditor is coming to take my 2 sons to be his slaves. I'm tempted to read the entire story, but I think we will go alongside together dealing with the principles so that I don't take too much of the time. Actually, and then we can see. Now, the principle here that I want you to bear in mind is the principle of starting very small with what you have. Because in verse 2, Elisha says to this woman, what shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in your house? And she said, your maidservant has got nothing in the house but a jar of oil. Do you see the words that she is using? The servant has nothing. She so totally underestimated what she had, that literally she had to get the help of somebody else. But there's a great thing here because she had gone to seek for help. So there's some two principles here that I want us to draw right at the beginning, is that at whatever point you want to start something, most likely you have something that can become the basis for starting. But you may not necessarily see it yourself. You need maybe the help of somebody. So seek help. When I went to Dr. Gatere, I needed his advice. He needed my writing skills at that time. And the two of us could relate very, very well together. So start with what you have, no matter how small it is, but let it be guided with the right estimation of what it's worth. From Elisha's point of view, how much do you think that oil was worth? A lot or a little? In her own mind, a little. But she needed the guidance of Elisha to be able to see this. Now, let me move away from there. I'll come back to it. But tell you, one of our biggest problems is today is many people trying to think, I am going to start a business sometimes when I get capital. There's a word for it. It's called broke. I don't know how to pronounce it. There's a story about a guy and he knew how to deal with the difficult words. And he went to a lawyer and said, what do I do? There's some guys who are crossing through my house. And he said, go put a notice. The lawyer told him, go put a notice and and the notice should say, trespassers will be prosecuted. Okay? So he went and he got a piece of wood, he put a stick out there, and he began to write on it. And he wrote, trespassers, that was hard enough, will be he cancelled, he started again, would be he cancelled, tried about 5 times, and then he says, what the heck? Trespassers will be clobbered. Some words are very difficult. That's the problem I have with the word procrastination. First of all, I'm a Kikuyu, so there's an R in there, and my inclination is to be able to say something different from what it actually says. And the second one is that it's putting off things that should not be put off. You can do something now. When you put things off into the future, very often they can eventually grow into useless things. I see this in my life. About every 4 or 5 years, we go through our cabinets and the books and the paperwork and all of that to try and clear up garbage, things that have accumulated. The amazing thing for me is always how many piles of paper I throw away, but every one of those papers was very valuable at one time. But with time, I see a receipt. I never used it. It's useless. I see a file that I had kept for a project. That project was wiped out, maybe succeeded or failed, but there's a whole file for it. And the pile is always huge. When I light, now I do it on a chimney. I put them all inside like a chimney during when it's very cold, and I light up a big fire with it. And that fire, after it has molded down and it just ash, usually lasts there for more than 2 weeks. Just so many things that were valuable. And I know when I die, my children will go into my cabinet and burn up an even bigger pile. Procrastination tends to reduce things to no value. So what you do right now is very important. Now let's go back to this woman and look at something else that she talks about here. And she is talking to Elisha. Then Elisha now continues to tell to her. Then verse 3. Then he said, go borrow vessels from everywhere, from all your neighbors, empty vessels, do not gather just a few. And when you have come in, you shall shut the door behind you and your sons, and then pour it into all those vessels and set aside the full ones. These are two business principles I want to discuss here. And the first thing that she was told to do is to go and borrow. And I'd like to talk about this concept a little bit in depth. Borrowing, but with a lot of care. Borrowing cautiously. Borrowing, caring for a reputation. I lose books all the time. After I loan them to my friends, I like reading. I give away books because I want to encourage others to read. 95% of all those books never come back. Does anybody have a similar experience, or does this just happen to me? What does that say of you if you can borrow something from somebody and you will not be bothered by the idea of returning it? Or am I stepping on toes here? Understand it? A friend of mine, a man that has mentored me for many, many years, helped me on the idea of money. So if you want to keep friends with friends also, loan them with a lot of caution. And he told me, my principle himself, I haven't been as good as him in applying, but it says my principle is that since a friend that I want to keep borrow something from me, I ask him whether there's some amount I can give him to add to whatever it is that he's doing, and he doesn't have to pay it back. So he's asking 10,000 shillings. He thinks if I give him 2,000 and he adds to it, I think we will remain friends. But if he borrows 10,000 and he doesn't pay it, our friendship is gone. Are you with me? But if you now revert the tables here and you apply it on yourself, one of the greatest things that you can do in establishing a legacy is to be able to borrow cautiously. When we were in study 6, we were taught the principle of compound interest. You know it? It's called compound. But that is money paid to a bank. And the reason we were taught compound interest is because those who taught us understood that we would be slaves forever, paying off a bank, paying somebody else. The reverse of it, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, is called compound gain. And it's an even more powerful principle if you apply it yourself. So when you borrow only what you can repay easily. Notice she borrowed pots on advice of the prophet of the prophet of God, pots. Because even if she did the business she was about to do and it failed, she would still be able to return the pot, isn't it? And maybe in that culture, she could also make some pots if one could. She probably would have been able to make a pot and return it. She did not borrow capital, she did not borrow big amounts of money. And I would say, if you really want to start something, and especially at your age, start it very small and grow it. The second principle here is that she was given, second point on that one, on that the passage we just read, she was given a business model. It's called a business proposition. The how of your business. What do you do to make money? The Bible says in Proverbs 14, verse 23, that all hard work leads to profit, but the talk of lips leads only to poverty. Proverbs 14, 23. But if you examine many of the businesses that we do in Kenya, 99% of all of them are loss making. Give you an example. Did I give you the last time an example of matatu? Yet? No? Let's do the math on a matatu. How much does the matatu from Nairobi charge to get here? How much? 70 bob. So somebody do a quick math. Multiply by 13 people. Is it 13? Yeah. Let's assume because it will drop somebody on the road and all of that matatu actually carries 20 people. So how much money is that? Is that 1,400? What's the distance between here and Nairobi?
Not teacher.
18 kilometers. According to the AA, the standard rate for a matatu such as the one we have just described is about 100 shillings. per kilometer. So how much money has the matatu spent? I don't know. And how much money has it made? Profit or loss? Have you ever seen anybody who profited from a matatu business? I know drivers do, and I know the policemen do. But have you ever seen somebody who profited from a matatu business? No, right there, the SACCO does, definitely. And if you're wise, you would buy more shares in the SACCO than in the matatu. Has anybody ever owned a matatu here? Yeah? Come on. Yeah, we're talking business, aren't we? Yeah? And we're talking about legacy business. Matatu is not a legacy business, but let's say that. Any willing volunteer to tell us your story, please? Did you make money? How much? Well, not really. Sounds very almost reasonable. Did you lose money or did you not make money? You lost a lot of money. I can tell you, I have spoken about this subject in more than maybe 20 different gatherings. I've actually never come across anybody who ever made money in a matatu. But you are pushed by somebody to buy it. You are given mathematics that don't make sense. They don't factor corruption. They don't factor many of those things. They don't factor the long-term repairs. It just counts the fuel for that particular day. But if anything happens outside of the fuel business, you're in trouble. Just do your math. But you may think, well, fine, let's examine. In 2008, I was hired on recommendation, by the way, by my MP, Martha Karua. She's a great person, by the way. She just think if you don't know. But she doesn't fit in with the psyche of the Kenyan thinking at this particular moment. I would say she's about 20 or 30 years ahead of her time. And that's why she gets into a lot of trouble, and she's an honest person. Anyhow, when Martha met me, we did not know each other very well, but she says, I think you should be given a national profile. That's what she said. That she took my hand and introduced me to the country director of UNDP and told them, I think you need to hire this person to do something about the youth unemployment problem. They did. They interviewed me, they checked my profile, they gave me the job of establishing what sort of businesses that youth can do in Kenya profitably. I had a car, I had a driver, I had a lot of money, I had a lot of facilitation, and I traveled across the entire country. And I really enjoyed that experience, 2 years. And I resigned after 2 years because I refused to implement what I recommended. But here's what we found out. In my journey across Kenya, we reviewed about like 20 many different types of businesses. And I was shocked that every single type of business we were looking into that is practiced by rural people, most of them were just loss-making. Example, South Bukiranda. I spent almost 2 weeks there. Then the majority of the farmers I interviewed were at that time doing sugarcane farming. You know that business? You grow the sugarcane over a 2-year period. At that time in 2008, you spent something like 17,000 shillings on an acre. And then you sold the meal to the meal companies, and they paid you about 36,000 shillings for an acre. Profit or loss? I said, why do you sell to them? They said, what can you do with the sugarcane? So somebody came with an invention, and they would mill their meal themselves. They would heat it overnight with the only shut on, and they would produce something that is called jaggery. And the value of the produce, this value addition would increase from 36,000 per acre to 40,000 shillings per acre. And a lot of sweat and a lot of withstanding a lot of heat. So I say, I will hunt for somebody who only does this as a business. I wasn't able to find one person. All the people that we interviewed who do the Miwa business were either teachers, where's the money coming from? The salary, yeah. Or policemen, where's the money coming from? From bribes. Huh? Somebody had to have another income. And just like in a matatu business, encouraged by other people that if you invest in Miwa you will make money. Then now you said,